This week, wherever you are in the Jewish world, if you're paying attention to the cycle of Torah reading, then you are aware that we began the saga of Joseph with this week's Parashat Vayeshev. Joseph is, he's kind of a brat, and he really irritates his brothers who conspire to do away with him. At first, a plan of murder is hatched, and then, thanks to the calming influence of the oldest brother, Reuben, it turns in merely to a plan to sell Joseph into slavery. He goes down to Egypt. Improbably, he rises to prominence, but then he gets into a little bit of trouble and he goes to prison. It's a big up and down story. Across the whole saga, one of the themes that abides and continually reminds the reader what the story is really all about is all of the things that can get in the way of relationships between siblings and the abiding power of love and faith and hope that can still keep a family together. The story is not about what happens when a global pandemic comes, but it might as well be, because we have taken on all sorts of hindrances and distance from the communities that we consider to be our siblings at WRT. Alona Nir Keren is making her fourth visit as a visiting rabbi in residence to Westchester Reformed Temple, if I'm not mistaken. This is number 4, something like that. It's definitely not fewer than 4. It might be 5. It might be 5. She has been the rabbi not of just one, but actually of 2 congregations that are considered siblings to WRT. After her ordination in Israel as a Reform rabbi, ordained from the Hebrew Union College Jewish Institute of Religion in 2016, for the first 2 years of her rabbinical service, she served Kehillat in Modin, one of Israel's fastest growing cities, and Reform Jewish congregations. And by the way, in the same location that is the biblical home of the Maccabees. She now has served for the last 5 years, as the rabbi of Kamatz, or Kehillat Mevasseret in the beautiful Mevasseret suburb of Yerushalayim. But this is the first time we've been able to reconnect since the pandemic. When Joseph's brothers finally reconnect with their long-lost Joseph, they don't recognize him. They see this impressively dressed man in the throne room of the very Pharaoh of Egypt, and the Torah tells us that they don't recognize him. Rashi comments here that the reason they did not recognize Joseph is because he had grown a beard. Right?
Now I recognize you.
When Rabbi Alona came, she knew me right away. So I'm not able to play any tricks on one of our long-lost sisters. But how fortunate are we to know what the Torah tells us, which is that even when there have been extraordinary circumstances that force distance between siblings, the bond of love is strong and can bring us back together again. So welcome back to WRT, Rabbi Alona Nir Keren, who is, by the way, not only distinguished as a leading rabbi in Israel and in the global Jewish Reform community, but also for her degrees in international relations and conflict research, resolution and management, both from the Hebrew University of Jerusalem. This is your first time back since before COVID, and I'll be in Israel for the first time in 4 years come February. So we'll connect again at the CCAR convention. In the meantime, welcome back, Rabbi Alona, and you are the proud family member with your partner Yael, and I hate to ask this, but how old are your daughter Ori and son Itamar now? Fantastic. So welcome back to Bima of WRT. So happy to have you. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So I'm going to read from my pages, since it's in English and I'm a bit excited.
Great.
And okay.
Yeah, use that one though.
And you can hear that my English is a bit rusty because 3 years I was not really talking English, I was talking only Hebrew. So first, and I wrote it down so, we can, we are on the same page, literally. So first I would like to thank Rabbi Blake and Cantor Kleiman and Rabbi Bacon. I said it right? Yes. Which I first met this evening, and also your president. And it is the first time since COVID that I'm back at WRT, and as Rabbi Blake said, when I knew that I'm coming to a tour or to visit the US, it was obvious that the first home that I will come to is WRT. So I'm so glad to be here again and to celebrate Shabbat with you this evening and tomorrow morning in Torah study together, if you'd like. So Rabbi Blake asked me to speak or about Hanukkah or about Vayeshev, and I chose Vayeshev. And why? Because it's one of the best Torah portion in the Torah. There are not enough stories there, right? There has such great stories, and it's all woven with genius and sparkled with good drama and tension. It's not a coincidence that, right, the Broadway show is about those portions. But I will focus, actually, you focused on the last portion of the parashot, of the end of the story, so I'm actually going to focus on the beginning of the story. So, and I will say I highly recommend here and at home to read the rest. It's really amazing stories. So our portion is named after the first word of it, Vayeshev. Literally, it means to sit or sitting. Lashevet is to sit. Jacob is sitting in his homeland. After many years of running from his brother Esau and being a stranger and an outsider, Jacob is finally back at home. And I think it is not only speaking about the geography, but mainly about the mental state Jacob is in. And we expect the story to tell us a bit more about this wonderful stage that Jacob finally got to. But the Torah, as a great, great story, surprises us. The next sentence, right after that we are hearing that Jacob is sitting happily in his land, the next sentence jumps directly to talk about one of Jacob's sons, and I'm sure that you are guessing already who, is the first of the two sons that Jacob had with Rachel, Yosef. And Yosef, in our story, is not a baby anymore. He's not yet a full-grown man. He's only 17. And this is what the Torah chooses to say about him. Vayisrael, I'm going to do it in Hebrew first, so you'll just have some of the sounds of Hebrew and then in English. וישראל אהב את יוסף מכל בניו, כי בן זקונים הוא לו, ועשה לו כתונת פסים, ויראו אחיו כי אותו אהב אביהם מכל אחיו, וישנאו אותו, ולא יכלו דברו לשלום. Now Israel loved Joseph more than all his other sons, because he was the son of his old age. So he had made him a coat of many colors. When his brothers saw that their father loved him more than all his brothers, they hated him and could not speak peaceably unto him. All this hatred only because of a piece of clothing, right? Only because of a multicolor clothes. And I have to say that, by the way, for modern Hebrew speakers, if we have anybody here, well, I know that, רועי, נכון? רועי, how would you translate כתונת פסים in a modern Hebrew way? What would be כתונת פסים? Don't think about it, just say. Pajama with, what's pasim? Stripes, right? So, ketonet pasim for the regular Israeli is not the multicolor, how do you say the Broadway name?
Technical dream coat.
Yes, so it's not a dream coat, it's just a robe with pasim, with stripes, which is kind of funny to understand that it's different for us. And I have to say that for other interpreters of the Torah, ketonet pasim, it's a gown that has long sleeves. And it just shows us that Hebrew, when you translate it, you have at least three different options that are very, very different from each other. Anyway, so whether we want to stay with the Broadway image of the amazing Technicolor dream coat or just a robe with long sleeves or long stripes, it's obvious that it means something to the rest of the brothers. And to understand what is going on in Joseph's brothers' minds, we have to remember their family story. For sure, their father and their mothers, they have more than one, of course, 4, told them from when they were really young about how Grandpa Isaac, though he was the second in line, were chosen over his older brother Ishmael, and about their own father Jacob, who tricked his older brother Esau or Esav, right? How do you say it in Esau? I'm going to do Esav, so I will not trick myself. So his own father Jacob, who tricked his older brother Esav to win the birthright and the blessing of Grandpa Isaac. And now they see this Joseph, son number 11. Okay, he's not the first, he's not the second, he's number 11, all the way back, who gets all this special attention from their father, and on top of that, not trying even to hide it or conceal it. Then we can understand why it is not just a simple jealousy among siblings. It is, but it's also their future and their family future, which they are worried about. With that in mind, we can understand that Joseph, with his humiliating dreams and maybe arrogance, is not just an annoying little brother. He's a real threat. And what about his father Jacob? Was his love to Joseph blinding him? Not at all. The script is very clear that Jacob was aware to the situation. He even scolds his son Joseph. He's saying like that. When he told his father as well as his brothers, his father rebuked him and said, "What is this dream you had? Will your mother and I and your brother actually come and bow down to the ground before you? Are you crazy?" His brothers were jealous of him, but his father kept the matter in mind. That's the word, it's not my word, it's the word of the Bible. So the father, Jacob, is well aware of the great tension between Joseph and the siblings. And what the next thing that Jacob, the father, is doing? Well, any parent here knows that sometimes the best thing to do is to put some distance between your fighting kids. Here are your questions. So I have, as you heard, 2 kids. Ori, she's 9, and Itamar is 4. And let's say that nowadays, this is my main strategy as a parent, to keep them apart as possible. So Jacob is doing the exact opposite. He's sending Joseph, instead of like keeping Joseph next to him, he's sending Joseph to search his brother who had gone to graze their father's flock in Shechem. The brothers are not 30 minutes away. Jacob lives in the surrounding of the city of Hebron, south of Jerusalem, and the brothers are all the way north next to the city of Shechem, or Nablus these days. So back in those days, it was at least 3 days riding a donkey from one place to another. So Jacob is sending Joseph, 17 years old, alone, far away from his home to the other 10 brothers. And he knows that the brothers hate Joseph. He could choose, actually, to send another person, right? He could order some of his men to accompany Joseph, but no, he is sending Joseph all by himself. And my question is, why? Why does he do it? Why is not doing a different thing? Why he, in a way, send Joseph, to a dangerous place? So I think the hint for me is the way that Jacob's name appears in our story, in our little story. We already know that Jacob got another name from God. It was the last parasha. You remember? What was Jacob's God? Israel. Very good. Nachon. So his other name is Israel, which means in Hebrew, the one who fights or wrestles with God. Okay, so that's his other name. So in our verses, we have 3 different times that Jacob is called by his own name. The 2 first one, he called Israel, not Jacob. And the last one is Jacob. So in the first 2 ones, Jacob is the patriarch, the leader of his tribe, the tribe that is wrestling with God and man and overcomes. He is driven by God's promise to become great. He looks at his sons and he sees the one that reminds him himself the most, the one who has visions, who is not afraid to tell his inner truth, even if it will put him in a dangerous position. And that's the reason whenever Jacob is in that position, it appears as Israel. Israel is giving the cloth. Israel is sending Jacob, not, sorry. Wrong. I don't know where it came from, but it's interesting. Israel is sending Joseph to his brother. So when Jacob, or better, Israel, is sending Joseph, he's driven by his own vision of uniting the brothers again, with maybe the thought that God will prevail and Joseph will become their leader. The third time in our story, in our small portion of the whole portion, that his name is specifically mentioned, it is at the tragic end of this part of our story. They took the ornated robe, or the multicolor coat, back to their father and said, "We found this, examine it to see whether it is your son's robe." He recognized it and says, "It is my son's robe. Some precious animal has devoured him. Joseph has surely been torn to pieces." Then Jacob tore his clothes, put on a sackcloth, and mourned for his son many days. So here, he is not Israel, he is Jacob. Here we find the man, the private father, not the patriarch, not the leader, but the father who mourns his beloved son. Of course, we know that Joseph is alive, but Jacob thinks that Joseph is dead. I believe that there is a meaning in choosing to use sometimes Israel and sometimes Jacob. And maybe, just maybe, the Torah tries to tell us that we need to balance our actions in life in better than what Jacob has done. Always to remember that yes, there is a divine plan or a destiny or ideology or a vision that lead us and direct our deeds. And then we are Israel. But there is also love and relationship and grace. And then maybe we're Jacob. Judaism name it in a different name. Judaism name it in Din ve Chesed. So Din is like judgment or justice, and it's like straight, and Chesed, it's grace, or Rachamim, it's mercy. If Jacob Israel knew how to balance Din and Chesed in his life and in his relationship with his sons, maybe he could continue to sit peacefully in his land. Since he didn't, the outcome will be the opposite of Vayeshev. It will end up with Jacob and all of his sons going, not sitting, but going down actually from Eretz Israel, and again to be a stranger in another land. May we today in Israel and as well in the rest of the world will know to better the ways we are balancing between strict ideologies and grace and mercy, so we can live truly in peace, in shalom. Shabbat shalom v'chag Chanukah sameach.